Oh god, Dane.
I'm obsessed with researching broken strats, team comps, builds, classes, and yes, characters in RPGs. Over the last year, I've made multiple top 10 lists going over some of my findings. Today, I've compiled 60 of those characters into a single list. Now, just a quick refresher, when I say broken, I pretty much mean that through a character's abilities, build, equipment, or stats, they trivialize the difficulty of their respective title. If you're new to the channel, why don't you subscribe? Also, if you would like perks like requesting your own video, exclusive content, and access to the pro community chat, click on the link below and join the pro tier on Patreon for only $5 a month. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get started with 60 broken RPG party members. In Child of Light, there is a character named Jen. Jen is an overlooked party member in an overlooked RPG. She is the single best debuffer in the game. She has the ability to slow enemies on the timeline as well as paralyze them, essentially breaking standard battles. In boss fights, this strategy can be a little harder to employ, but it will often still work, making her an invaluable party member. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 has a playable roster of 24 characters, 25 if you count Juggernaut. Among these playable characters, the Green Goblin is probably the most broken, but he's not accessible until the endgame. One character you can use early on, though, is Deadpool. And Deadpool comes with the single best skill in the game. Best one ever. This ability buffs all of Deadpool's stats, which is useful early on. But once you max the skill, it gives 30 bonus points to all stats, which turns Deadpool into, well, the best one ever. Leave it up to this guy to troll the entire game. Grandia 2 has an insane exploit that is commonly used by players to defeat higher level enemies. This is achieved by setting a single player with the taunt ability, loading them up with defensive boosts and auto regen, then defending while all the other players get in free attacks. Now, if speedrunning isn't your thing though, might I also suggest looking at Millennia's late game ability, Spellbinding Eye. Spellbinding Eye has a 100% chance of paralyzing any enemy in the game. This includes the final boss. By paralyzing your enemy, you essentially buy yourself free turns to do whatever you want. All in all, this is the single most broken ability in the entire Grandia series. In the original Trials of Mana, there was a spell glitch that allowed players to bypass the cast time. Because of this, Angela became the strongest character in the game. Her only problem stemmed from MP management and how squishy she was. In the remake, almost all of these issues were addressed, leaving Angela not only the best character in the game, but the most broken as well. Now, which class is most broken on her is a tricky question. It's really a toss-up between Runeseer and Magus, but in the end, I chose the Magus class. Magus isn't only Angela's best-looking class overall, it's also the class that learns the single best AoE spell, Ancient Curse. Different abilities and exploits, which cut the cost of mana or allow Angela to regain MP easily, make her a spell-spamming machine. Once you have the Obsidian Power Chain ability, Angela can infinitely spam Ancient Curse. This just straight up makes everything in this game, including the final boss, an absolute cakewalk. And although this isn't class specific, thanks to the remake's new dodge mechanic, avoiding damage is much easier, making Angela's squishiness a moot point. Fire Emblem, or Fire Emblem 7, the Blazing Blade, as is known pretty much everywhere else in the world, has a host of broken characters. But as is tradition, when you reach Eliwood's chapter, you are given a pre-promoted knight named Marcus. Now, this is nothing new, we've seen these knights in many of the other Fire Emblem games. But then you realize that Marcus starts out with incredible stats and has some of the best growths in the game. Not only that, but Cavalry are the single best unit type and Spears are the best weapon type, which Marcus is maxed out on. This horse-riding tyrant can solo all 20 chapters easily, and if players would like a challenge, I'd suggest not using him. All in all, Marcus is incredibly strong and was thrown in to make sure the game wasn't too hard for players. The next speedrun is an incredibly popular one with nearly 300 active runners, and that is Final Fantasy VII. Now, the any percent glitchless run ran at about 6 hours for quite a while, and the game has been nearly optimized for the speedrun. Many of the strategies have changed over the years, but one has stayed pretty much consistent since its inception. And that is the Tifa Power Soul strat. A speedrun of this game uses a bunch of different strategies, with the main gimmick being the use of grenades to do damage and strategic use of limit breaks. There's also the incredibly important enemy skill, Big Guard, which casts Barrier, Magic Barrier, and Haste on the entire party. If you can make it past the run killer, that is Demon Gate, and make it past Cosmo Canyon, you can get Tifa Lockhart's mid-game weapon, the Power Soul. This weapon is found at Mount Nibble, and man, is it an amazing exploit. Power Soul's damage doubles when Tifa's HP is in critical. It quadruples if she has the status effect Death Sentence. And you want to know the craziest thing? Both of these effects stack. So if a player equips Tifa with Power Soul, keeps her HP in the critical, and casts Death Sentence on her, Tifa will reach endgame damage numbers from that point forward. Using Death Blow, she has a chance of hitting for 9,999 damage, as long as the hit to her accuracy doesn't cause her to miss. Overall, Tifa, along with Big Guard, is what makes the second half of Final Fantasy VII speedrun even remotely possible. Skies of Arcadia is an RPG gem lost to the Dreamcast and GameCube. This adventure follows a crew of pirates which includes a healer and support mage by the name of Fina. Now, Fina is dead useful throughout your entire playthrough, wielding healing magics that allow your other party members to focus on damage. But where she really starts to get broken is when she attains the ability Lunar Light. Lunar Light revives all allies, cures all status elements, and fully heals everyone. And here's the catch: its MP cost is relatively small, making it easy to use multiple times in a challenging battle. The original Diablo was a behemoth of a video game. Released in the 90s, this dungeon-crawling masterpiece would go on to inspire an entire genre of RPGs. When you boot up the game, you can choose from one of three characters: the Warrior, Rogue, and Sorcerer. The Sorcerer is easily the best character to choose, and with his mana shield, breaks the entire game. This glitch is referred to as the MS No Stun and is activated when your character is damaged more than their maximum life and has the mana shield activated. This makes it so you will never be stunned. Now that may sound trivial, but enemies aren't immune to stun, which means that you can spam attacks without worrying of being interrupted. If a player uses the enemy Black Death to remove maximum health, this exploit becomes even more broken. I need to make a correction to a previous list. I mentioned that Marcus was a broken unit in Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade, which is correct. What wasn't correct was that he had the highest growth in the game, which I apologize for. That being said, a starting Cavalry Knight that actually has the best growth in the game is Seth from Fire Emblem 8. In Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, Seth is available from the beginning and Erika's route, and absolutely breaks the stats of this and any other title. He essentially is a Cavalier on steroids, which is the single best class available and can easily solo the game in any difficulty. Yuri is the main protagonist for both Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts Covenant. In the first title, he's pretty busted if you abuse the Fire Fusion strength stat and the Mind's Eye. In the second title, Yuri truly becomes a god. Early on, using the same strategy as the first game with the Fire Fusion will give you a mid-game boss slayer. But late game, using the third form of the Earth Fusion, Neomon, and Yuri's Final Fusion along with the Mind's Eye will break this title. On top of this, Yuri's Final Fusion has a screen wiping attack that covers the entire battlefield. So yeah, he's crazy strong. It should be mentioned that with his other fusions, Yuri can also cover roles like healer, buffer, mage DPS, and so on. But you'll want him as a physical attacker to get his full potential. An unspoken rule for most RPG class systems is that if the class is called hero, it's a broken class. Case in point, Ichiban's default class in Yakuza Like a Dragon. There's really nothing this class can't do. First, it's an awesome support with the ability to buff the attack of your entire party, or revive fallen party members for a small amount of MP. Second, it's a damaging machine. In boss battles, Ichiban's hero class's Bat Breaker moves absolutely obliterate them. Against mobs, Mega Swing can easily take out an entire group, making him insanely useful in random encounters. To sweeten the deal even further, Ichiban's final weapon, the legendary Hero's Bat, has an electric aura. Electric Aura is so broken in the first title that it was nerfed in subsequent ones. With the combination of Bat Breaker skills and the Electric Bat, Ichiban will deliver the highest possible damage in the game. Overall, if you're wanting to build Ichiban optimally, then stick with his very first class hero. Super Robot Tyson OG Saga Endless Frontier has an incredibly unique battle system. It plays out in 2D arenas where the player strings together combos from one of their 4 party members. Now, there are a lot of useful party members to choose from, but the well-endowed Princess Kaguya is easily the best. Kaguya possesses the skill Miracle, which casts the single best attack buff in the game, along with Guts, Drive, Excel, Gain, Luck, and Predict as well. It's not just the best self buff in the game, it may be one of the best self buffs in RPG history. This easily turns Kaguya into the strongest character in Endless Frontier, and there's just no contest. Baten Kaitos Origins has an incredibly unique card-based battle system. In Origins, you have 3 party members who all share a pool of cards in order to attack. Now, this makes individuality in this title a little difficult. The only thing that really sets the party members apart are EX combos. If you select specific cards in a row, the party members can perform an EX combo. Soggy, the main protagonist, happens to have an endgame spammable EX combo that can destroy almost any boss in the entire game while also fully healing himself. In order to pull it off, you need 3 specific endgame cards, and then you only need your basic attack cards. So it is pretty easy to pull off multiple times in battle. That is, if the enemy lives through it. One of the most impressive RPG speedruns to watch is that of the any percent glitchless original versions of Pokemon. It's incredible how simple yet complex this run is. The entire speedrun is contingent on the male Pokemon Nidoran and its final evolution Nidoking. What's amazing about this Pokemon is that you can have a Nidoking immediately after beating the first gym leader. Now there are a few tactics at play here to manipulate this game and its required fights. Nidoking's crazy stats and attacks can handle much of the first few battles. The biggest trick, though, comes towards the latter half, when you reach Celadon City and can purchase Accuracy X items. You see, Accuracy X is a one-time use item that makes the Pokemon have perfect accuracy. This works across every attack, including the low accuracy attack, Horn Drill. This combination one-shots nearly every Pokemon from this point forward. The most interesting part of this run comes towards the end. The Elite Four are challenging in a regular playthrough, so using a single underleveled Pokemon makes it even worse. Lorelei and Bruno go down fairly easy, but Agatha and Lance are a whole different story. Lance ends up being a late game run killer, as its Gyarados Hydro Pump can kill Nidoking if it crits. If you get past that though, Ice Beam takes out the rest of the Dragon types. After that, you Horn Drill your rival to oblivion and you have a current world record of 1 hour and 44 minutes. Pamela is a returning character to the Atelier series. She's also a ghost this time around in Manichemia. She uses a teddy bear as a weapon and has one of the highest damaging builds in the entire game. First of all, she is immune to all physical attacks and abilities, making up for her low defense and HP. But what makes her devastating is her skill No Bowling, which increases its damage based on how low her HP is. She can drain her own HP, and if used strategically, she ends up dishing out the most damage in the game. Also, don't worry, Manichemia fans, we'll talk about Muppy one day. The Tales series is no stranger to broken protagonists, but the most broken of all is the demonic babe Velvet. Velvet's mystic arts are incredibly fast and absolutely devastating, and with the right combo set up, she can infinitely combo any enemy that isn't resistant to stun. Swallow Dance, Gouging Spin, Harsh Rebuttal, and Rising Moon make up the best combo in the game, and if spammed with the use of her mystic arts, Velvet's damage potential is unstoppable. Phantasy Star 4 is a Sega Genesis masterpiece that has aged relatively well over the years. What hasn't aged well is party consistency, as so many of the party members are in and out of your party throughout your entire playthrough. The core 4, Chaz, Ren, Rune, and the 9th member of this list, Rika, are some of the best in the game, not just for accessibility, but capability as well. Rika has the game-breaking move Saner. Saner increases the agility of your party, which makes them attack before the enemy and improves their evasion. The crazy part is that Saner's effects can stack and last until the end of the battle, making it possible to max out your party's agility during hard boss fights. As if that wasn't enough, Rika has the highest natural agility of any party member, can heal, and has the 3rd highest attack stat. All in all, she's irreplaceable during your playthrough. Final Fantasy Type 0 isn't a game that comes to mind for most Final Fantasy fans. Its niche place in the community has left it relatively obscure. In Type 0, you choose from a class of mercenary students. You control one with 2 others as AI partners. Now, there is a few ways to break this game, but no character is more exploitable than Deuce. First of all, Deuce's physical attack is 360 degrees, and its area of attack grows as you play your flute. This allows you to often soft lock entire mobs of enemies. Second is her invincibility build. Given her avoid ability and the right setup, she is nearly untouchable. Finally is her support. She can both heal herself and her party, as well as send the AI party members into a stat-enhanced berserk mode. All in all, Deuce holds her place as the most broken FF Type 0 party member. In the world of Fire Emblem, the protagonists often get the raw end of the deal. Late promotions have plagued the protagonists of this series, but all of that changed with Fire Emblem Three Houses. Byleth is the absolute strongest protagonist in the series. They can be built into almost any class in the game and outpaces nearly every party member in the Fire Emblem universe. Now, I know what you're wondering. Is there a difference between female and male Byleth? And the answer is yes. Female Byleth is smoking hot and male Byleth looks like an idiot. I mean, female Byleth is the better choice and the stronger character with access to the female-only classes, which includes one of the best classes in the game, the Falcon Knight. With increased mobility, access to more weapon types, and incredible damage potential, Falcon Knight Byleth creams the competition. Ryu, the chosen dragon from the Breath of Fire series, has always been fairly broken. His transformations in the first two titles lended him immense utility, and late-game Breath of Fire 4's Ryu could absolutely destroy. But the truly broken blue-haired wonder of this series is Ryu from Breath of Fire 3. Due to the master mechanic, this game is just completely busted, and Ryu is no different. Now, unlike many of the other heroes on this list, there isn't a single way to break Ryu. If you keep Ryu dead and at level 1 until you receive the Master Bunyan, you can start him off with an incredible strength and speed stat boost. Toss him on Deus in the late game and you have a physical powerhouse. Mage Ryu is probably the worst of the three builds, but it's still viable. The final build is meant to boost his AP, which is sorely needed in order to spam his Dragon Gene transformations. Either way you look at it, if you can get him on a master early on, Ryu will grow into an absolute beast. Final Fantasy XIII has a progression problem that pretty much makes it impossible to break party members until they leave Cocoon in the late game. Once there though, there are a few standouts, but no one hits quite like Vanille. First of all, Vanille's poison ability and summon are incredible, and with the right strategy you absolutely wrecks the enemy. But the main reason she's broken is her death spell. Vanille is the only saboteur who gains the ability to instantly kill enemies, and this has been used to farm Final Fantasy XIII's biggest baddie, the Adamantoise. The strategy begins with her bringing out her summon to incapacitate the Adamantoise, then using a team of saboteurs, spam debuffs and the death spell until your roughly 8% chance hits. Sure, it's somewhat of a gamble, but one that can work pretty regularly if done right, and can easily level max your party in the latter half. Trails Through Daybreak was recently released in the West, and with it came an entirely new cast of characters in the Seventh Saga. Now, the Trails series is no stranger to busted characters. You have Fi's evasion in the first Cold Steel games, Joshua's incredible casting in S-Craft in the Sky Duology, Tio's versatility in Trails from Azure, or more recently, Rishia's well-rounded godlike abilities in Reverie. All of this is to say that broken characters aren't unique. But what is unique is a defensive ability that makes your team practically unkillable. Rosette has the ability Cobalt Curtain, which if cast increases the defense, cast guard, and gives everyone in the circle an overshield. These shields take the place of HP and are there until the enemy dishes out enough damage to break them. There is another party member who has a similar ability, but what makes Cobalt Curtain so useful is it's cheap to use. All one has to do is slap on a bunch of speed cords and spam Cobalt Curtain, and there isn't a single enemy in the game that can take your party down. This especially works well with Van's tanking and aggro abilities. The Seventh Saga is it's a broken game. It's incredibly difficult and confusing in its layout. Being able to choose your character at the beginning shapes your entire playthrough. Now, there are a few different routes you can take, but one of the ways to make the game's difficulty obsolete is to choose or recruit the wizard Valsu. Valsu has an ability called Elixir. Elixir restores all HP and MP to a single target. The crazy part is that Valsu's MP cost is deducted before he casts Elixir. So if cast on himself, it's entirely MP free. The Elixir spell essentially makes you unbeatable, unless an enemy can one-shot you or your teammate. Legend of Dragoon is an interesting title when it comes to party members. It has action commands built into its battle system called additions, and because of this, player ability can increase the effectiveness of a party member. This is the case for Meru. Meru's final addition has a 600% damage multiplier, making it one of the highest damaging moves in the game. But that doesn't necessarily break the game. What actually does is the speed stat. Legend of Dragoon, like many titles on this list, overlooked the single most abusable stat in this genre, speed. Meru is the fastest character in the game. What does this mean? Well, speed determines how many turns a character can take. So if Meru's speed is 100 and the enemy's is 50, she'll attack twice for every one attack the enemy performs, given the speed buffing equipment found throughout the game, and Meru will be able to attack 3 times before most enemies and bosses can attack. Practice her final edition enough to land all 6 blows, and you will absolutely destroy any challenge in Legend of Dragoon. I backed Eiyuden Chronicles nearly 5 years ago and was happy to finally play it. This love note and low-key sequel to the Suikoden series was a dream for someone like me. In Eiyuden Chronicles, you can recruit over 100 heroes to join your retinue. Now, there are a lot of amazing characters in this cast, Lamb being one of my favorites, but no one is as broken as Momo. Momo is a mage whose self-buffed magic stat not only makes him statistically the best character in the game, but also allows him to dish out the most damage of any character in this title as well. The only thing that Momo needs is MP. As long as this magical girl impersonating scientist has that, he's able to screen wipe anything and everything the game has to throw at you. Breath of Fire is no stranger to straight up busted characters. I've already mentioned Ryu and Pico in previous videos, which you can check out on my channel page. But I have yet to mention the destructive mage Blue, also known as Deus. Blue is a hidden party member in Breath of Fire 2 that can be recruited as soon as you have access to the well. What's crazy is that at this point in the story, your party members will be in their early 20s, while Blue is level 35. Now, of course, levels will catch up, but that's alright. Even with your party members powered up with shamans, Blue still outpaces them in stats. Not just that, but she has access to all the offensive spells by level 39, and her special ability heals her HP to full health. Her stat growths are ridiculous, and all in all, she's just straight up a broken mage. The Hyperdimension Neptunia series has never been my cup of tea, but tales of its antics have reached my ears. Specifically, the absolutely busted nature of the first title. In the original Hyperdimension Neptunia, the titular protagonist, Neptune, has a cheap, easily spammable ultimate attack that was so broken and so overpowered that it became an ongoing joke in the series moving forward. Star Ocean, like Dragon Quest, also has its fair share of broken characters, but one type has always stood out as the most busted of them all, and that's the long-range DPS. Maria from Star Ocean Till the End of Time manages to be the single most busted party member in the series for that very reason. Not only does Maria have great AI and can tank hits, but she has an incredibly abusable attack called Scatter Beam that melts bosses from afar. It's possible to not only take down any boss in the game within minutes, but also do it without receiving a single hit. The crazy part is that she's pretty much broken from the moment you get her. Once you synthesize her weapon into the best pistol in the game, you can never go back. Kate, Seth, and Vanille are known for having instant death strategies that one can abuse, but neither of them come close to the absolutely absurd exploit of Selfie's The End. There are a dozen ways to manipulate this attack into appearing, and it insta-kills every boss aside from the undead. Now, one of the most reliable strategies for spamming this attack was on the original PlayStation, which, if you open the lid of the console, the game will glitch and enemies will not attack, but the ability to scroll through Selfie's limit abilities will be intact, ensuring that the end hits every time without the enemy attacking you. In order to regularly get the end to appear, don't just have Selfie at low health, but give her a minimal status ailment which will increase its chances of appearing. Trails of Cold Steel's 4 titles have a major power creep issue, one that makes this series one of the most exploitable RPGs I've ever played, and it's amazing. I already covered the evasion mechanic in my previous list, but I didn't quite dive into the Harem King himself, Rean Schwarzer. Rean is a busted protagonist, and just so happens to be busted for different reasons in each installment. He's probably most broken in Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 4. In 1, he can use delay gems and Arc Slash to indefinitely delay all enemies' turns. Spamming Arc Slash can make almost every battle a cakewalk. This was fixed, kind of, in the later titles, but by Trails of Cold Steel 4, Rean has his Ogre mode, which is the best single buff in the series, incredible stats and crafts, but what really pushes him over the edge is his absolutely broken Brave Orders, specifically Divine Song and Dark Moon. Both of these orders take away casting time for the party and raise his ATS. Since Arts users are completely busted in games 3 and 4, if you're using party members like Emma, Muse, or Crow, Then paired with Reen, you have the most broken strat in the final entry of this amazing series. Oh, and he also always gets endgame specific broken equipment as well. Final Fantasy Rebirth is the most recent title in the series, and it's been fun to watch different game-breaking strategies come out of its deceptively deep combat system. Almost every character in this title is useful, but one has consistently broken the endgame of both Remake and Rebirth, and that character is Aerith. Aerith is your main magic DPS, and while magic is entirely busted in this title, that isn't why she's on this list. The main ability that tips Aerith towards the broken category is her ATB and magic ward spells. Both of these abilities cast a ward on the ground, and if a party member stands in it, they will receive a unique buff. Magic ward allows you to cast a spell twice. MP conservation, especially in the hard mode arena battles, is key. So being able to cast a spell twice, let's say Kaguya, not only melts bosses but conserves your MP as well. Aerith's ATB ward coupled with Yuffie's Brumo form is a game-breaking combination that not only makes you invincible, but gives you infinite ATB as well. Etrian Odyssey is full of exploitable classes, some with good artwork. But going back to the OG title, one of the craziest decisions I've ever seen in a video game was to make the medic one of your best damage dealers. I'm not kidding here. Referred to as the combat medic, the medic's passive that boosts his attack is the highest in the game. Once it's fully leveled, your medic will gain a 3x boost to its attack. Throw on a maxed out Caduceus skill and you have a support unit that outperforms your frontliners. This passive was nerfed in subsequent titles, but remains in the HD remaster. The HD remaster also improved the medic's support abilities on top of all that. Healing Touch now acts as a full party heal at level 3 instead of a 40% heal at level 10. And I would be remiss not to bring up the medic's Immunize skill that, if fully buffed, reduces all damage by 60%. Boosted, this resistance can reach 85%, making your team nigh unkillable. Overall, the Etrian Odyssey medic may be the single greatest healer in RPG history. There are no shortage of broken characters in Vanillaware's masterpiece tactical title, Unicorn Overlord, but I think that anyone who's played the game will agree that Selvi the Shaman is easily one of the best. The Shaman is a debuffer whom, unlike most other party members, can fit into nearly every party formation in the game. Now all of her debuffs are useful, but the Shaman truly becomes broken when she gains the Dustbound Staff and its insane ability Sandstorm. Sandstorm casts Blind on all enemies. Blind is one of the best debuffs in the game as it not only guarantees a miss from every enemy, but it can't be countered by True Strike. This means that Selvi alone breaks the enemy's formation, allowing, say, a counter team to easily eliminate the enemy. Like I mentioned, there are many other broken characters, but few are broken all by themselves. What can I say about Yuna from Final Fantasy X that hasn't already been said? There's the obvious broken strategies, that of being able to summon monsters whom have their own health bars and abilities, as well as being the only true healer in the party. Diving deeper though, there are just so many ways Yuna breaks this title. First of all, most enemies can be indefinitely delayed by Valefor's sonic wings, meaning that they will be unable to attack until Valefor is dismissed. Then there's the endgame summons, which each breaks the game in their own way. Anima has the highest attack power and innate ability to break the damage limit. This means that without having to grind for special items, Anima can surpass the 9999 damage limit to do straight up outrageous damage. Then there's the Magus Sisters, whom also possess the damage limit break but also have an attack that hits 15 times, dishing out some of the highest damage in the game next to Waka. Finally, there's Yojimbo, who can be manipulated into using Zanmato, an instant death attack that works on every single enemy in the game. This works perfectly on any enemy that doesn't have a phase, such as Penance, the hardest boss in the game. I would be remiss not to mention Yuna's Celestial Weapon, which is the easiest to obtain of all the endgame weapons. This weapon combines the 1 MP skill with the damage limit break to make her a devastating mage, even without her summons. Recruiting Glenn in Chrono Cross is a hard choice as it asks you to do something Surge, the protagonist, would never do. But if a player is willing to give up on Kid, then they will obtain one of the best party members in this title. Glenn not only has insanely high attack, defense, accuracy, and HP, but if equipped with his ultimate weapon, the Einlanzer, he becomes the best green innate in the game. Seeing as green innates make up some of the best party members, this is saying a lot. If paired with Surge, he has the double tech, X strike, which will devastate enemies and bosses alike. Since you have to use Surge anyway, there's really no reason not to bring Glenn along for the ride. Unicorn Overlord is an absolute gem, and I've talked about it multiple times on the channel. One character I've waited to use on a list is the single best character in the game, as far as damage and stun locking goes, Unifi. Unifi is an archer who can hit every enemy on the battlefield. She also has the single best skill in the game, Glacial Rain, which she learns at level 30. Glacial Rain is a charge skill that by itself is incredible. It hits every enemy on the field for decent damage while also casting Freeze. This effectively stun locks an entire group of enemies. If supported with other characters who can strip Unifi of her wait time and allow her to repeat Glacial Rain, you have an automatic and practically unblockable Scream Wipe. In Fire Emblem Awakening, the first generation of characters can get married and have children, which due to some time-traveling shenanigans, join the party as second-gen units halfway through the game. Now, the second-gen units are much better than the first due to them inheriting the top passes of their parents. This allows one to strategically build insane units with incredible abilities. But one child unit stands above the rest, and that unit is Morgan. Morgan is the child of the player's custom character Robin. Robin has access to some of the best skills in the game, but the catch here is that Morgan is the only character that can be a third-gen unit. If Crom marries a God tier unit, preferably a Pegasus Knight, he'll pass all their abilities to Lucina. If Robin then marries Lucina, you can pass all the best skills in the game to Morgan. All in all, Morgan is incredibly strong and completely customizable, making her the best character in the game. Wakka might not seem like much next to characters like Yuna, whose summons are broken in and of themselves, or Riku, who we'll be discussing shortly. But the lovable Blitzball player holds an incredible secret. If you abuse different exploits in Blitzball and unlock his limit and final weapon, Wakka, using Attack Reel, can do the most damage in Final Fantasy X, and it's miles away from anyone else. You see, every time Attack Reels comes up, it's positioned the same way. So with a little bit of practice, you can get double attack each time. Couple this with his Loner Overdrive ability and you can spam this devastating attack constantly. Sure, it's not as flashy as other party members, but overall, Wakka's enemy breaking attack sets him in the upper part of this list. I'm not a huge fan of Final Fantasy VIII. I know why it's popular. It's a broken game. There are so many exploits that fans just love to take advantage of. One of these exploits is the seemingly endless damage loop of Zell's Limit Break. In Final Fantasy VIII, when a character's health is in the critical range, they will receive access to their limit breaks. Squall's is incredibly strong, and Selphie has an instant kill attack that can be abused, but Zell's is a whole nother story. Depending on his health, you will receive up to 12 seconds to perform certain combos that are randomly given to you. But what you're looking for are the two shortest and most common combos, Punch Rush and Booyah. Given some practice and fast reflexes, it is possible to do over 100 combos. This can accumulate into over 1,000,000 damage, which there isn't a single boss in the game that can withstand an attack like that. I spoke about Lord of the Rings: The Third Age in my Broken RPGs video, which you can check out here. This title can be busted in so many ways that it's hard to pinpoint any best strategy. That is, other than the elf Idriel. Idriel has Aura of the Valor, which is unlocked way too early in your playthrough. This ability can be cast on any party member, including herself, and lasts until the end of the battle. Aura of Valor will automatically heal a character upon death. Now that may sound busted as is, but the thing that pushes this ability over the edge is that once revived, the party member immediately gets a turn. If you're following, this means that Idriel is unkillable. If you use your first turn to cast Aura of the Valor on herself, Idriel will revive upon death, and can simply recast Aura of the Valor. Throw on her Frenzy ability that allows her to cast an additional spell, and you have an automatic win no matter what. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the culmination of all Xenoblade games, and is a must-play for fans of the genre. But as far as characters' uniqueness, the 6 party members kind of fall flat. There are only small differences between each warrior, that is other than the protagonist, Noah. Towards the last third of the game, Noah gets access to his talent art, Unlimited Blade. This lets him use his Lucky 7 sword for a set amount of time, and the potential to break this build is incredible. Depending on which role he's in, he'll have specific arts, but the real kicker is through a specific strat as a defender, you and your party can become invincible. Ultimately, Noah is completely busted and makes for one of the strongest Xenoblade protagonists in the series. Now, I've already talked about how busted Aerith's wards are in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. What I haven't delved into is just how insane Yuffie's exploits are in this title. Yuffie is a devastating party member whose doppelganger abilities pretty much breaks combat. If built towards a magic DPS and with doppelganger active while being boosted by Arcane Ward, Yuffie can dish out the most damage of any character, period. Not just that, but if you use her Brumo form with Aerith's ATB ward, Yuffie becomes unkillable. And that's not hyperbole. She cannot be killed with this combo, and as her ATB will constantly be charging, if you give her the right materia, she can charge the ATB of your entire party, turning them into boss-destroying machines. At the end of the day, Yuffie is one of the best characters in the game. Cassie's Concoct skill from Octopath Traveler 2 is the be-all, end-all skill. It heals, restores BP, increases attack, inflicts devastating debuffs, the best of which would be poison, and, well, pretty much does everything. Cassie is the best character in the game, and will enable any other party member to be god tier in the process. Taking in a game's context is important to identifying its limitations, then deciding which character helps break those limitations. In Final Fantasy IX, there is a 9,999 damage cap, which is reached by endgame via two methods. One is leveling and equipment, or two, abilities. Quina not only has the lowest MP costing 9999 damaging ability in Frog Drop, but obtaining her blue magic by devouring enemies gains you the best abilities in Final Fantasy IX as well. In the mid game, if you eat a zombie well, you'll gain level 5 death. Go back to Gizmlock Grotto and easily one-shot Grand Dragons, the second hardest random battle in the game, until Freya, another awesome character, has killed 100 dragons and can now damage for 9999 with Dragon's Crest. Besides that, if you know which enemies to use it on, level 5 death stays relevant. On top of that, you have Mighty Guard, which in the late game casts Shell and Protect. Its animation is long, which gives your party a chance to heal if you have auto regain. Bad Breath, which despite its low accuracy is absolutely devastating when it hits. There's also Angel Snack, which is a party-wide remedy. Magic Hammer can be used to deplete Osmos's MP. This causes AI to wig out and can completely shatter the most difficult boss. Auto Life makes your party unkillable, and Night might be her single best ability. It casts sleep on everyone with perfect accuracy. If your party has insomnia, then you can easily sleep block enemies and bosses who are immune. And finally, abusing Limit Glove early on with Auto Life allows Quina to one-shot every early game boss all the way to Disc 2. Don't sleep on Quina. Sonic Chronicles is not a good RPG. It's a cheaply made mess that does so much damage to the Sonic brand. Or, well, whatever's left of it. It also has one of the most overpowered, ridiculously broken characters in existence. Cream the Rabbit has an ability called Refresh. Refresh restores PP to the entire party, including herself. At rank 2, it costs 8 PP but heals 10. She can also heal the entire party, remove all status effects, and generally makes it impossible for the enemy to defeat you. If you equipped her with the Chow Pharaoh, her inputs will never fail, meaning that she will enable all other party members to dish out damage. Cream makes Sonic Chronicles so easy that it's recommended not to use her. Not that you'll have a good experience either way. Xenoblade Chronicles party member AI is atrocious and will utilize every character suboptimally. This means that which party member the player decides to manually control is incredibly important, and there is no argument over which party member is the single most broken character to control. Melia is the love-struck princess of a dying race. She's also a staggering mess of game-breaking strategies. First of all, Melia has the ability to softlock enemies by abusing the instant topple art combination, spear break, and starlight kick. This alone sends her to the top of the list, but she still brings more to the table. Her discharging spells allows her to complete chain attacks, maxing out their damage, and using an exploit, Melia can sleep then knock high-level enemies off a cliff on the Bionis knee, giving you access to late-game weapons and skill books. Yeah, Melia is crazy. Final Fantasy XV is a busted game, and not always in a good sense. Of the broken Final Fantasy titles, I'd say that it falls in third place, right behind Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy VIII. Now, I could talk about the main character Noctis, who is absolutely busted if you abuse Warp Strike, but I'm actually going to talk about Prompto. It's obvious that the devs never originally planned on giving you control of a long-range character who utilizes a machine gun and rocket launcher from the beginning. This is an absolutely insane exploit that lets you blow up mobs instantly, racking up early game experience. But the bazooka isn't the only way Prompto is broken, because a long-range character was never considered during development. Many of the hardest boss battles can be cheesed by having Prompto stand out of attack range and slowly pick away at their health with his guns. Overall, Prompto might be the single greatest broken character in any action-based Final Fantasy. Shin Megami Tensei is a masterclass in turn-based RPG mechanics. Atlas is full of evil geniuses when it comes to game design. Just boot up SMT3, also known as Nocturne, and you'll see what I mean. This game is difficult. That is until it's not. The Demi-fiend is our silent protagonist, and in true SMT style, is completely customizable, all the way down to his individual stats. Now you could make him into a mage, which would give him good elemental coverage, but the best build for the late game is his physical build. If you prioritize strength, agility, and vitality while picking up skills like focus, might, endure, and the single best physical attack in the game, Frykugel, in the end game you will be one-shotting bosses or clearing mobs in a heartbeat. Pico is such an interesting party member, and breaking him is a unique experience. In Breath of Fire 3, you can assign a master to your characters. Upon level up, this will determine their stats. There are dozens of masters that create some game-breaking characters, but there is one that is almost wholly unique to Pico. Fall is like a unicorn bartender or something, and any character that is assigned to him will receive HP plus 4, Power plus 1, Defense plus 3, Intelligence minus 3, and Agility minus 3 upon level up. Now, most party members won't benefit from this. The increase in HP is great, but the agility drop ultimately isn't worth it, as you will already be 15 to 20 levels up at this point, and have already built specific stats within your characters. That is, other than Pico. You see, Pico is a mid-game party member, and you receive him at level 1. Normally this would be a major issue. Level 1? But with the Master System, Pico is a blank slate, and you have many options. Slap him on Fall immediately and leave him there for most of the game, switch him over to the Bunyan in the late game for increased attack, and you have one of the greatest tanks in RPG history. Pico will be insanely slow, but his counter rate will be through the roof, and his increased HP and defense will make him nearly untouchable. If you throw him out in the front, he'll not only be a damage sponge, but will counter for some of the highest damage in the game. In Octopath Traveler, you have a merchant named Tressa. Now, Tressa alone is a top tier character, but given the subclass Runelord Tressa becomes an absolute god. Not only will she become one of the highest damaging characters in the game, but she makes all your other party members broken as well. Transfer and Rest make for a BP battery capable of building up boost points for insane enhanced attacks. Abusing hired help and the runes of the Runelord will turn the other mages in your band of travelers into DPS machines capable of doing 25 to 85k per attack. Mastering Sidestep along with the above strategies will give you one of the most broken characters in the game. The Persona protagonists all share the same potential for breaking the game. They are the only ones who can switch out personas, thus making them completely customizable and in turn completely broken. But after looking through each title, I think Joker takes the cake. Do you want an insta-kill build using Alice? Or perhaps you want an unkillable team with Maria? Or maybe you just want to be an incredible DPS with Yoshitsune. Building up your ranking with Carlene and Justine will get you the ability Special Treatment. This allows you to buy personas, and with a little bit of grinding, you can have a late game persona very early on. Either way you look at it, Joker is one of the most broken RPG protagonists ever. The for this list is one of the most requested by my subscribers, and that is Raquel from Wild Arms 4. Raquel with the right build becomes not just your highest damage dealer, but overall the single best character in the series. Her ability Intrude allows her to take out mobs, and bosses absolutely melt to her single target damage. Once you get her late game weapons, especially her ultimate weapon, the gap between her and the other party members is simply unfair. Oh, wait, did you think that was all? That's just if you play the normal way. If you bring over save data from Alter Code F and use it to boost Raquel's Lombardia or Fafnir weapons, which you can get early on with the right strategy, she will obliterate any difficulty this game has to offer. If you want to enjoy the challenge of Wild Arms 4, I'd recommend not doing this. Final Fantasy Tactics isn't known for being a balanced game. Not only are some of the class combinations like Monk, Knight, Ninja, or even the ever-broken Calculator Caster just ridiculously busted, but you also receive some pretty broken story characters join your party as well. One of these that seems so outrageously broken that many speculate he was a mistake is Thunder God Cid or Alandu. Cid has the character-specific class Holy Swordsman. This gives him all the skills and abilities of the Holy Knight, Dark Knight, and Divine Knight classes. If that isn't enough, given the Excalibur sword which comes with auto haste, he'll be casting some of the best spells, all while dashing around the battlefield, outpacing the enemy. From the point you receive him until the end game, Cid will absolutely destroy your experience, unless your goal is to walk through this game without any challenge. The Dragon Quest series is no stranger to broken characters, but its newest installment, Dragon Quest XI, may have one of the most abusable party members in this beloved title's history. Eric is the late game DPS of DQ11 and manages to put out the highest damage possible in the game. Look it up. People have found some crazy ways to push his damage even higher. The main reason for this is his late game builds and the correct setup. In order to do the most damage, it'll take 3 turns of setup. In this strategy, you'll have to oomph him, hit the enemy with the status effect, and have Eric use his multiplier skill. If all of this is done and you've given him the best knives in the game, then Eric will one-hit any boss. It's actually insane to watch this combo come to fruition. Sure, it's tedious and sometimes won't work, but when it does, it's so satisfying. In Xenoblade Chronicles X, a severely underrated title that is almost entirely responsible for the creation of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Look it up. Anyway, you can create a hero called Cross, and Cross is a god given the right build. You see, there are multiple builds you can go with in Xenoblade Chronicles X. There's the Black Bane insta-kill build that uses the ray gun, or you can absolutely abuse the overdrive mechanic with specific builds. But the most infamous, and probably the most broken, is the Blossom Dance build, which can one-hit every single enemy in the game, as is common with Xenoblade games. The build is complicated to explain, but if you're curious, I'd suggest checking out Enel's video on the topic. This guy is practically the Einstein of the Xenoblade series. It's exciting to see the sleeper hit Legend of Heroes series getting recognition in the West. This is almost entirely thanks to the PS Vita titles Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2. In the first 2 Cold Steel games, there was, well, let's call it a miscalculation by the devs. The evasion stat is incredibly abusable, especially in the second title, and there is one character with the highest natural evasion stat that becomes such an indestructible tank that it makes boss fights laughable. Fee Colossal is the evasion tank to end all evasion tanks. If given her starting Master Quartz Raven or the Thor Master Quartz, 2 Evergreens, evasion equipment, and counter damage specific quartz, she will not just only evade most physical attacks, but she'll counter with incredible damage and chain that damage into a team attack. Now, you would think that magic attacks might offset this, but in the first 2 games, enemies rarely use arts, and what arts they do use can be disrupted by Cold Steel's busted protagonist, Reen. Sailor Moon, Another Story, is an absolutely broken SNES RPG that many of you have probably never played. This game follows the well-known protagonist Sailor Moon and her magical girlfriends. Each party member comes with their own advantages, but none surpass the straight-up busted Sailor Pluto. Sailor Pluto possesses the outrageous ability Stop Time, which stops all enemies from acting for 3 turns. This includes bosses and yes, even the final boss. It has a 100% chance of hitting and costs 12 AP, which can easily be recovered via items or will be auto-recovered at the end of each battle. Rita from Tales of Vesperia has a unique place in that game as a DPS caster. Sure, there are really great characters in this game, but Rita simply breaks it with her nearly unlimited, extremely fast, and with the right passives, undisrupted spellcasting. Rita has screen wiping spells, and if set up with magic 1 through 4, spell end, lucky end, rhythm, and heavy magic with resilience to avoid spell disruption, and her best accessory, Shizel's necklace, you have a nuclear bomb able to solo any battle in the game. Once you have that set up, spam Meteor Storm and Tidal Wave, and the battlefield will be cleansed of all enemies. In the history of Final Fantasy, one class that has always been immensely exploitable is the Chemist. Riku from Final Fantasy X has an over limit called Mix, where you can combine different items to produce a whole host of effects. This ability is broken from the moment you get her, and stays that way all the way to the end game if you know what you're doing. She has dozens of awesome mix abilities like Ultra Null All, which makes you invulnerable to elemental damage while granting every single stat boost on your entire party. Chaos Grenade, which hits hard while casting Slow, Poison, Darkness, Silence, Full Break, and Sleep on the enemy. Hyper Mighty G, which casts Shell, Protect, Haste, Regain, and Auto Life on all your party members. Hot Spurs and Eccentric, which boosts everyone's overdrive charge. Couple this with endgame weapons, allows you to spam damage-focused overdrives like Wakka's Tack Reels or Titus's Blitz Ace. Sunburst is probably her best attacking mix, but you'll mainly be focusing on support. In the end, her mix ability is incredible and has been used to abuse this title from beginning to end. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the most broken game in the series, and Tora's custom robot girls, specifically Poppy Cutie Pie, make for the RPG genre's most broken character, period. Now, the explanation is kinda hard, because in order to truly understand just how abusable the systems in Xeno 2 are, you need to, well, understand them. But needless to say, here's the short and sweet breakdown. Poppy Cutie Pie, unlike other blades in the game, is completely customizable. If built with the utmost damage and critical skills in place, her damage over time ability plus her own massively devastating attacks, along with the blade combo finishing move Eruption, will cause over 1 billion damage. Yeah. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend giving Enel's channel a watch. He breaks down the in-depth workings of the mechanics and shows off just how devastating Poppy Cutie Pie is. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you like that, why don't you check out my retrospective series where I'm beating every PS2 RPG. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later.